Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahushai, Bahasham, Racha Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of 1 Kings, the 3rd chapter. And in here, we sort of see the, more of the rise of Solomon's wisdom, and the Lord blessing him actually with that wisdom. All right, and so let's get right into it. Now this is the book of 1 Kings chapter 3 verse 1. And Solomon made affinity with Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Now affinity here meaning he became the son-in-law, right, i.e. he married Pharaoh's daughter, right? If you look into the word affinity in the Hebrew, right, we have here Chathan, and it says here to become a son-in-law, to make oneself a daughter's husband, right? And so in this case, this would be Pharaoh's daughter that Solomon became husband to. And you can see down here, to make oneself a daughter's husband. So Solomon made affinity with Pharaoh, king of Egypt, i.e. he married Pharaoh's daughter, and took Pharaoh's daughter and brought her into the city of David, until he had made an end of building his own house, and the house of the Lord Yahweh, and the wall of Jerusalem round about. Okay, so at this point in time, you had Solomon dwelling in the city of David because he hadn't built his house yet, right? Which as we read through, we'll get to the point where he actually does build his house. And interestingly enough, right, this wall about Jerusalem could very well be that same wall that when it ends up getting broken down by the Babylonians and then rebuilt as we went into in the book of Nehemiah. So verse 2, only the people sacrificed in high places, because there was no house built unto the name of the Lord Yahweh until those days. And so that was sort of the convention at the time. Right now, typically, when it came to sacrificing or the worship of deities, mostly it would be done in high places, right? Like at the top of a mountain or top of some high area where they would do that. I forget exactly why they did that, but let's see, maybe if I go ahead and let's look up the dictionaries and let's see if we can find something here related to the high places. Yeah, so we have high place here. Okay, so it says here, high place, an eminence, natural or artificial, where worship by sacrifice or offerings was made. The first altar after the flood was built on a mountain. Genesis 8:20. Abraham also built an altar on a mountain. It was on a mountain in Gilead that Laban and Jacob offered sacrifices. So this is like the way that it happened in old times, right? Where we at? After the Israelites entered the promised land, they were strictly enjoined to overthrow the high places of the Canaanites. See, so even the Canaanites worship their gods on the high places, right? And they were forbidden to worship the Lord on high places, and were enjoined to use but one altar for sacrifices. The injunction here, or the injunction against high places, was however imperfectly obeyed, and we find again and again mention made of them, right? So interesting how here, as we're reading, because the house of the Lord, in this case the temple, wasn't built yet, right? You had Israel worshiping or sacrificing on high places to the Lord, right? Where they would build an altar and serve the Lord. Verse 3, and Solomon loved the Lord Yahweh, and it's possible here that the Lord pardoned it, right? Or just didn't really overlooked it, right? Because the temple wasn't built yet. But you can imagine the reason why he mentioned us not worshiping on the high places was really more specific to the worship of the idols or the false gods of these other nations, because that was a custom, that was something that they did. So verse 3, and Solomon loved the Lord Yahweh, walking in the statutes of David his father. Only he sacrificed and burnt incense in high places, because once again the temple wasn't built yet. And going into this word here, statutes, let's take a look. All right, chakwa, and it says here, statute, ordinance, enactment, something prescribed. Now remember, before King David passed, he did command or instruct Solomon to walk in the ways of the Lord, right? And to do the things that he knew was right in the eyes of the Lord. Verse 4, and the king went to Gibeon to sacrifice there, for that was the great high place. 1,000 burnt offerings did Solomon offer upon that altar. So there was an altar that was built there where these sacrifices would be done. In Gibeon, the Lord Yahweh appeared to Solomon in a dream by night. And God said, ask what I shall give thee. And Solomon said, thou hast shewed unto thy servant David, my father, great mercy, according as he walked before thee in truth, and in righteousness, and in uprightness of heart with thee. And thou hast kept for him this great kindness, that thou hast given him a son to sit on his throne, as it is this day. So King Solomon basically, said to the Lord, you showed a lot of mercy to David, considering that he followed your ways in righteousness. His mind was correct and after you, but you continued that mercy and kindness, and extending that by blessing his son, which in this case was Solomon, to continue to remain in power and rule as king. Verse 7, and now, O Lord Yahweh my God, thou hast made thy servant king instead of David my father. Right? Instead here, not meaning, for example, you took away David and put me there, but more so in the stead, right? So in the position or in the role that King David once was, now King Solomon is in that role as king. And I am but a little child. I know not how to go in or how to go out or come in. In this case, how to conduct himself in the right manner with this role that he is in. And thy servant is in the midst of thy people, which thou hast chosen, a great people that cannot be numbered nor counted for multitude. Give therefore thy servant an understanding heart to judge thy people. And the heart here doesn't mean like his actual heart down here. When you go into the word heart in the Hebrew, it's lab, which means your mind. Okay, so the King Solomon replied to the Lord when the Lord asked him, what does he want? He said, bless me with an understanding mind, right? That I may be able to judge thy people, that I may discern between good and bad. For who is able to judge this so great a people? So there's a whole lot of these people, we know how they are. And if I'm going to be the one ruling over them, then I think the most important thing that I would seek is a good mind, the ability to discern between good and bad, to make the right call. And the speech pleased the Lord, that Solomon had asked this thing. Why? Because it was selfless in this sense, right? King Solomon wasn't asking, and as we're about to read in the next verse, which the Lord emphasized, King Solomon wasn't asking for something toward his gain directly per se, but more so that he can be in a better position to take care of the Lord's people, right? It's like, it's like if you were hired as a shepherd, and the master who hired you ends up, after some time you're working, he ends up saying, hey, what do you want? You've been doing a good job, or whatever the case is. I want to get you something, right? And the shepherd's reply to the master is, I don't know, a better staff or something that can make it more beneficial to the sheep that he is shepherding over. That will please the master, because it's like, damn, like you could have had anything, but instead you're so, concerned, right, or focused on taking care of my sheep, that you ask for something that can help you do that job even better. So here in this case, similarly, right? Verse 11, and that's why it pleased the Lord. Verse 11, and God said unto him, because thou hast asked this thing, and hast not asked for thyself long life, neither hast asked riches for thyself, nor hast asked the life of thine enemies, but hast asked for thyself understanding to discern judgment. Behold, I have done according to thy words. Lo, I have given thee a wise and understanding heart, so that there was none like thee before thee, neither after thee shall any arise like unto thee. And it goes to stand as to why it would make sense that King Solomon was Yahushai, because, or Yahushai was King Solomon, because the part about none shall arise like unto thee, right? Nobody would basically be able to match Solomon in that. But we know, as Yahushai mentioned, matter of fact, let's go there. A greater than Solomon. Yep, Matthew 12:42. The queen of the south shall rise up in the judgment with this generation, and shall condemn it, for she came from the uttermost parts of the earth to hear the wisdom of Solomon. And behold, a greater than Solomon is here. See, so when you go back here, though, the Lord said that there were none shall arise like unto Solomon, but Yahushua said he was greater, right? So it would make sense that Solomon would be Yahushua, right? Because it would make sense that he would be, it's him anyway, right? Now, going back to the point here, so the Lord, it's not like the Lord just opened up Solomon's mind and just dumped infinite wisdom in there, right? But rather what he did was he blessed Solomon with the mind to be able to grasp and easily gain wisdom on a level that the average individual wouldn't be able to attain. And that's why King Solomon was able to become so wise, because the way he would think about things, the solutions he would come up with, the ideas, the judgments, the laws, the things he would institute, or the way he would think about things would be on a much deeper or a much higher level than the average individual, because his mind would be expanded like that. Okay? Like you can take two individuals, give them the same scenario, and one of them can analyze it and consider so many cases about it, think so far down the line, that you're the one even giving them that scenario haven't even thought about that. And then you can have somebody else that looks at it on a surface level or on a basic level. It's all about the depth of the mind here, right? So King Solomon was blessed with a great one. Verse 13, and I have also given thee that which thou hast not asked, both riches and honor, so that there shall not be any among the kings like unto thee all thy days. So when the Lord said, I've given this to you, it's basically like, I've granted this, right? So you're gonna, I've answered that for you. I've blessed you with wisdom, or with an understanding mind, and also with those riches. Verse 14, and if thou wilt walk in my ways, to keep my statutes and my commandments, as thy father David did walk, then I will lengthen thy days. And Solomon awoke, and behold, it was a dream. And he came to Jerusalem. So remember, this happened at Gibeon, right, where he went to do the sacrifice. And then he had a dream, and this happened in the dream. So after he woke up, as it says here, he came to Jerusalem and stood before the ark of the covenant of the Lord, and offered up burnt offerings, and offered peace offerings, and made a feast to all his servants. Now, King Solomon wasn't a Levite, right? He was from the line of Judah. So when it says he offered burnt offerings, not that he literally went and cut up the animals and put it on the altar. The priest did that, but it was offered in his name, like in that sense. It was his offering, right, to make, i.e. to bring to them. What's one example? you build a house. They say, oh, it's my house. Oh, I built a house over in Cali. Yeah, but it was actually construction workers, and architects and all of them that physically did the building. But yet it's your house. So technically, right, you bring the sacrifice, it's your offering. Physically, it's the Levites or the priests in specific that are doing this. It says here, and offered up burnt offerings and peace offerings, and made a feast to all his servants. Then there came two women. So now, after all of that had passed, in due time, right, sometime after, two women, right, these two women came that were harlots. So these two women were prostitutes, right? That's what they did. Onto the king and stood before him. So they had an issue. They brought them before Solomon, and the one woman said, "Oh, my lord, I and this woman dwell in one house, and I was delivered of a child with her in the house." Now, let's look here at this word here, house. We have bayath, as it says here, house, dwelling, habitation, shelter. Let's see what else they have here. Okay, so mainly it's just house. Now, considering that they were harlots, this could have been maybe like, either a brothel or like, some quarters, right, where, the harlots would stay, obviously when they're not working and stuff like that. Now, today, most modern day harlots use some form of a contraceptive, method, right, or drug, because you can imagine, say this was the case, right, where a woman was in hardships, and so she had to go into this direction. Having a child would make life even much harder, right? Now, it's not always the case, right? Like, it's in the ancient world, if it could have been, right, they did have contraceptives back then, but through natural means. But it could have been some of them might have used it, some of them might not have used it, right? In this case, we know in the case of these two women, they didn't use it. So the long story short, both of these harlots, right, they did, one of them, as it says here, they dwelt in one house, and I was delivered of a child with her in the house. And it came to pass, meaning she had a baby. And it came to pass the third day after that I was delivered, so 3 days later, that this woman was delivered also. So she then also had her baby. So they were pregnant at the same time. And we were together. There was no stranger with us in the house, save we two in the house. So it was just them two that, stayed amongst themselves. And this woman's child died in the night because she overlaid it. Let's look at that word, overlaid. All right, Shakab, it says, yeah, definitely not number 3. To be laid down, possibly that she slept on it, right? Let's look at this in the other translations, see how they word it. Yeah, see, New NKJV, this woman's son died in the night because she lay on him. NLT, she rolled over on him. She died, the baby died because she ended up laying on him, which is wild. But anyway, verse 20, and she arose at midnight and took my son from beside me while thine handmaid slept, and laid it in her bosom, and laid her dead child in my bosom. And that goes to show you the nature of this woman, right? Because when, like, a true mother, for example, has a child, if their child dies, it's not, you don't just get up and take somebody else's baby and then call it a day, right? You'd be distraught, like you'd be pretty messed up over your child. You'd be busy, in a state of damn, like being messed up, rather than worried about stealing somebody else's baby. But you have people like that here as well. And then it goes to show you as well that very probable she got pregnant through her harlotry, right? In this case, being a professional harlot, you know, it ends up happening, right? So she probably had that, and what, you know, this woman specifically whose child died, maybe she wasn't one to really care too much, right, about that, because that's a careless thing to do there, right? Anyway, she ends up taking her dead child, swaps it out with the other lady's child, and, you know, ends up taking that lady's baby and acting like it's hers. Verse 21, and when I rose in the morning to give my child suck, right, to breastfeed her child, behold, it was dead. But when I had considered it in the morning, behold, it was not my son, which I did bear. And, you know, that's something that a mother can do, right? They can definitely tell who is their child and not, because it goes beyond just looking at them physically to recognize there's that connection that they have. So she examined the baby and says, this is not her baby. And the other woman said, nay, but the living is my son, and the dead is thy son. And this said, no, but the dead is thy son, and the living is my son. Thus they spake before the king. So what's happening here, right? Two harlots come before the king. They give their story. One of them in particular says, hey, I had a child. 3 years later, this lady had a child. It was just us in the house with our children. This lady sleeps. She slept on her baby, kills the baby. She wakes up in the middle of the night, sees that her baby is dead, and she takes my baby and puts her baby in my place, and then takes my baby. In the morning, I woke up and realized this isn't my child, and this lady stole my child. So as this lady's giving her story to King Solomon, the other woman, you can imagine, like, interrupts at this point and says, no, that's not the case. No, that's my child. Your child is the dead one. And then the other woman replies and says, no, that's not the case. The living child. So they're going back and forth here. You got to imagine this in a realistic sense. So King Solomon is looking at all this, right? And automatically he's already thinking, okay, I know what to do. Verse 23, then said the king, the one saith, this is my son that liveth, and thy son is the dead. And the other saith, nay, but thy son is the dead, and my son is the living. So she's saying that the living one is her child, and the dead one is yours. You're saying the living one is yours, the dead one is hers. And the king said, bring me a sword. And they brought a sword before the king. So now you can imagine everybody's probably quiet now, like, oh, a sword. Is he going to put one of them to death? Like, what's going on? And the king said, divide the living child in two, and give half to the one and half to the other. So both of you are saying that that's okay. Cut the baby in half. You give one half to the other. You give the other half to the other. End the story, right? Now you both have a piece of the baby. You can call it a day. Verse 26. Then spake the woman whose the living child was unto the king, for her bowels yearned upon her son. So you can imagine, like her heart started beating fast, right? Like she's like, oh shit, no, because that was actually her son or her child. So the thought of the child being put to death was so much that she couldn't bear that. So you can imagine it was like a little, maybe like a little outburst here, right? Like, whoa, wait, hold on. And she said, oh, my lord, give her the living child, and in no wise slay it. See, so, you know, it's fine. Just, it's okay. You know what? If she wants to have it, just give her the child. I'd rather you give her the living baby than to kill the baby, right? Because it's her child, right? Any mother, at least in their right mind, would say, you know what? It's fine. I would rather, like, here, case in point, Moses, right? Moses' mother, right, along with his sister and everything, they came up with a plan and said, look, it's better that Moses is alive, even if, you know, he has to be taken care of by someone else, rather than for them to put him to death. So they did the plan and set it up to where Moses ended up where Pharaoh's daughter was, and then she ended up taking care of him, right? So there's that. Anyway, when she said that, don't kill the child. I'd rather you just give it to the other lady. But the other one said, let it be neither mine nor thine, but divided. Damn, that's a real demon right there. So the other harlot says, nah, you know what? Yeah, go ahead, cut the baby in half. You know, and then that way is this she can't have it, I can't have it. You know, if I can't have it, nobody can. Then the king answered and said, give her the living child, and in no wise slay it, for she is the mother thereof. Meaning, the woman that says don't kill the baby, give the baby to her. That's the real mother right there. All right, because no real mother would stand there and say, yes, kill my baby, cut the baby in half, so if I can't have it, nobody else. No. And that right there was a display of the wisdom that the Lord gave King Solomon. Once again, now it sounds very realistic. Oh yeah, that was a good ass idea. But prior to this happening, nobody would have really thought to do something like that, right? To test them to find out, you know, which one is the actual mother here. Verse 28, and all Israel heard the judgment which the king had judged, and they feared the king, for they saw that the wisdom of God was in him to do judgment. So everybody started talking about, yo, you heard that? That's crazy. Yo, damn, like, yo, like, that's crazy. I would not have thought about that. But like, yo, imagine, no, it's crazy. And so that brings us to the end of the book of 1 Kings, the 3rd chapter. And as you can see here, right, overall, the Lord is blessed King Solomon with that wisdom. And now King Solomon is sort of, you know, filling that seat, right, or that role as king here. So anyway, with that, Lord willing, this was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Recha Kodesh, and until next time, Shalom.